Was Jesus a homosexual?
Nope.
Of course he's not a homosexual.
Wow.
I know, wow, right, brother? But they actually teach it.
Some people
They actually teach it. They think Jesus Christ was a homo. That way their lifestyle can be approved. That's just wicked. It is satanic. It is very satanic. When I was at Berkeley School and studying in Bible class, they were trying to show these illusions, where Jesus Christ had some homosexual tendency. All right? Now, at very best, they can only use 2 minuscule passages that would even indicate it and not really say it. All right? That's at best. Like I told you before, here's another rule. You can find anything you want in the Bible that would indicate something. You can teach whatever you want in the Bible that would indicate something. All right, let's first go to John 13. We'll look at verse 23. John 13, verse 23. Now there was leaning on Jesus' bosom. Okay, someone was leaning right here on the bosom, all right? Okay, this is very intimate. One of his disciples whom Jesus loved. You see that? So there was some kind of really intimate love going on here. A male disciple, John, laid on Jesus' bosom, because that's just weird. If one of you during the middle of church service leaned on Brother Sean's lap like that, Brother Sean would go, "Get off me!" Like that.
I would.
Brother Brandon here can feel free to do that in our church.
I don't bring sodomites to church.
All right, verse 25. He then lying on, now this is really intimate, Jesus' breast, saith unto him, "Lord, who is it?" You see that? So now even right on Jesus' breast right here. So this is like, woo, very intimate right here. So they would try to prove that this is homosexuality. I know, sister, it's horrible. Now keep your hand here. We're going to look at it here later. But go to Matthew 14. Mark 14, Mark 14. Actually, we don't even have to go back there. Get your hand off of there. Go to Mark 14. Mark 14. We don't even have to go back there. Mark 14. It is laughable. Some of their interpretations used by the sodomites are very, very laughable. They can stretch something. But I told you too, as we've seen these other people too, we've seen Jehovah's Witness, Seventh-day Adventists, but not just them, but all sorts of people that I showed you. They can interpret all kinds of things in the Bible. See? That's why the atheist and liberal scholars, they throw up their hands and they say, you can't interpret the Bible rightly. Everything is relative. You can argue this doctrine, that doctrine, but you can find many different interpretations. That's what they're going to do. They're going to throw up their hands and say that. But the funny thing is that they say that about the Bible, but they don't say that about, law, history, and a lot of other things, Why? How do you know what's wrong and right? You just take the word as it says. That's it. Take the word as it says. That's it. All right. Even in English class, interpretation is very variable. You can vary. Okay, you can do ridiculous things. We all realize that in English class. There's no such thing as a strict interpretation. But in that English class, we do know that there's a certain limit where you can't stretch it to ridiculousness when it departs from the text itself, what it says. Yeah. See? So even liberals realize that there is such a thing as ridiculous interpretation if it departs from what the text exactly states, you see. Okay, anyway, let's look at Mark 14. We'll look at verse 51. Verse 51. Now, this is very intimate. And there's someone who followed Jesus. A certain young man having a linen cloth cast about his naked body. And the young men laid hold on him, and he left the linen cloth and fled from them naked. So assumingly, I don't know where they got the idea. But assumingly, this man who followed Jesus, there must have been something sexual going on with him and Jesus. See, because he was naked and etc., etc. Now, the simple answer is this, all right? And here's another tip that can help you. They find a lot of problems with Old Testament law, okay? And in the Bible. Here's a very simple answer to this, okay? It is very amazing that they pick on that culture, but they don't pick on a lot of other cultures that are far more worse. Yeah. But here's another thing. They all say, they all accuse saying, don't be racist. Don't be a Western Caucasian mentality. Then you accuse them, why are you using your Western Caucasian racist mentality enforcing your culture on what this Jewish culture was?
That's a good point.
This includes any other problems with the law.
Yeah.
Law and right here. Those liberals, they're going to have to shut up after that. Because they all psych about equal rights, racism, Eurocentric, blah, blah, blah interpretation,
Yeah, right.
Use that to your advantage then. Even though what they do is really silly and stupid, about, the minority and all that kind of stuff. I've been there. I've seen it. It's ridiculous what they do. I've studied African-American slave literature. I read them, all right? So I know that. It's ridiculous what they do, But you know what? If they want to harp on that, use it to your advantage. Use it to your advantage and say, why are you enforcing your Western, Eurocentric, racist mentality, your culture mindset into this Jewish culture right here?
Yeah, right.
See? You got to understand something else, brethren. This was almost 2,000 years ago. Even before 1800s, there were a lot of different ways cultures acted that were so different.
Yeah.
Okay, that were really mean and strict too, okay, and horrifying too, okay? So come on, give this a break. 2,000 years ago, and longer than that, starting with the law of Moses, and when you compare their culture systems with their contemporary culture systems in those days, they were the most lenient.
Yeah.
They were the most lenient and loving. Okay, anyways, so this is very simple. In Western culture, we would think this is strange, but in Eastern culture, this was perfectly natural, you gotta realize. It was perfectly natural. Like, for example, in Korea, and I'm a Korean myself, yet I think this is just weird. In Korea, I realized that there are these guys that would just go like this on my shoulder and hold hands, and I go, what are you doing? I remember one time we had that in summer camp. We had these boys from Korea coming, and then they were like holding hands and going like this on the guy's shoulders, and all the guys were like, what are you doing, man? You homo? And then my dad had to explain to them, don't do that here, guys. And they go, why? The Korean boys went, why? And then my dad said, well, if you do that, then here in American culture, they think you're, and then he said it, and they're like, oh, no, we're not! They're like, okay, no, we're not. See?
Or Asian women here do that. They hold hands. And
that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. So,
arm in arm, and they're not being.
So one thing you gotta, that's true, that's true, yeah. So you'd be surprised a lot of even Eurocentric cultures as well, how much they do those intimate things. So to say that something like this is like, that it was something homosexual, get a life, man. Get a life. You're just fantasizing it to be a homosexual thing. That's what you're fantasizing it to be, see? So it's just very funny, Also the dressing, and then the intimacy and all that, you got to realize this, it was so different in Eastern cultures. Those things in Western culture, we would think that's intimate and that's just homo. But in those cultures, no, it was just perfectly normal and natural. That's why those people, which is so funny, they tried to accuse King James of being a homosexual, Oh, he was a homosexual. But when I studied English literature during those days, it was normal for Englishmen to do that and even share the same bed.
Abraham Lincoln.
So that's just funny for people to say, oh, he's just a homosexual. Then you accuse him for being racist. You accuse him for being Eurocentric, Western, contemporary, modern 20th century racist. Because they didn't understand about those cultures back then, how they did things. See? Alright, but let's assume Jesus Christ was a homosexual. Alright? Let's go to Leviticus 20. Leviticus 20.
Oh boy.
Leviticus chapter 20.
Oh, here we go.
What a laughable world we live in, amen? This is a very laughable world we live in. Leviticus chapter 20. Let's just assume Jesus Christ was a sodomite. Leviticus chapter 20. We'll look at verse 13. Leviticus chapter 20, verse 13. What did the law say? The Old Testament law. The Old Testament law said, if a man also lie with mankind. Alright, so let's assume in Mark 13 that man was lying naked with Jesus. Alright, as he lieth with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They shall surely be put to death, their blood shall be upon them. So the Bible declares they have to die. They have to die. Old Testament law. Alright, now one, we see that Eastern Europe, Eastern culture is very different from Western culture. Alright, so those things were normal in the Bible. Alright, but number two, it never said anything about some kind of homosexual intercourse going on. None of that. You never saw that anywhere in those verses, see? And the third thing you got to realize is if Jesus did that, he should have been stoned to death according to Old Testament law. And what did Jesus say his job was? If he failed to do this, then he failed his mission. Go to Matthew 5. Go to Matthew 5. Matthew 5. Jesus failed his whole purpose of mission then, if he ever did that. Go to Matthew 5. What was he supposed to do with the law? Matthew chapter 5, verse 17. Matthew 5, verse 17. Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to what? Fulfill. And what did he say? Verse 18. For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law, till all be fulfilled. Jesus declared, I'm going to fit every little jot and tittle, and I fulfill the whole law.
Yep.
If Jesus Christ... This is very, you gotta laugh about, this is so stupid too. Was Jesus Christ really that tempted so strongly, to lust after a man and just to sleep with him one night after his 33 and a half years of living without sin, that he would fall into that kind of ridiculous temptation? That is very laughable. He lived without sin, without thinking one dirty thought.
Yeah, that's right.
And he would stoop low for something like that and ruin his whole entire mission.
Yeah.
When he said, I'm supposed to fulfill every jot and tittle of the law.
Oh, man,
Then guess what? Christianity is in vain. There's no such thing as salvation.
Mm-hmm.
There's no such thing as a homosexual Christian then. It should be just homosexual.
Mm-hmm.
You know why? There's no such thing as a Christian if Jesus Christ died in vain. Because he did die in vain because he did not fulfill the law. You see? Hello, this is Pastor Gene Kim of San Jose Bible Baptist Church in the San Francisco Bay Area. We hope that you were blessed by these videos today rather than offended. But unfortunately, I'm sure majority of the people out there would be offended by these videos rather than blessed, even though that was not the intention. Sometimes you must understand when the Bible shows truth, that God's views is strongly opposed against the world's view of truth. And maybe that's why you got offended today, because some of the words were too direct, or you never heard of some of these things before that may seem extremist in your eyes. But the thing is that if you would look at the scriptures from what the speaker reveals, then you would see how completely opposite and strong God's view is against the worldly views and the wrong doctrines out there. The Bible says in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 10 through 12, that people who do not want the truth is because they prefer a comfortable life. And what God will do is give them a lie that will deceive them and even damn them to hell. Why? Because they preferred a comfortable lie rather than the truth. And if that is your attitude after these videos today, I pray that will not be the case. If you sincerely are for the truth, then check it out if what the speaker says is from the scriptures. And if it is of the truth, before you cast your judgment.